Welcome. I'm Jesse Brackenbury, the Executive Director of the Rose Kennedy Greenway Conservancy. In this challenging time, parks are more valued than ever, and we're proud to care for the Greenway, the only public park in Boston that's managed by a nonprofit. Our staff has adapted our work to ensure that the Greenway can meet the community's needs through this difficult time. We really appreciate all of our donors and supporters who make this work possible. Tonight, we'll share with you behind the scenes stories and let you know what programs and amenities are available to you now on the Greenway. We're going to hear from Anthony Ruggiero, our Superintendent of Horticulture, and Rebecca McKevitz, our Capital Projects Manager, and Keelin Caldwell, our Director of Programs and Community Engagement, and Lucas Cowan, our Director and Curator of Public Art. And then finally, I'll share updates with you, including information about our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative. And then we'll take questions. So let's start with Anthony. So the Greenway was one of the first urban public parks to be cared for organically in the country. And Anthony, our superintendent, has been with us for a
Hi, everyone. This is Keelin. I don't know if Jesse is frozen for everybody, but I'm just going to jump in here briefly to finish the passover to Anthony. So Anthony is our superintendent of horticulture. He's been with us for 11 years, starting as a horticulturalist, and has been promoted twice now to lead the department. So I'm going to hand it over to him.
Thank you, Keelin, and thank you, Jesse, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Really looking forward to talk about horticulture this year. And my 11 years here, it's hard to believe where 11 years has gone. So a lot of life changes and a lot of changes here at the Greenway too. So as Keelin and Jesse mentioned, we manage the Greenway 100% organically. We don't use any chemical pesticides, herbicides, or synthetic fertilizers. We rely on a ground up approach in creating my philosophy with everything is creating a healthy functioning ecosystem that's unique to our downtown urban environment. And as we get into this year in managing it organically, this is certainly not the year that we were expecting. As you can see on the slide, wearing masks is one of the things we've had to adapt to. Daily disinfection of vehicles in the morning before heading out and at the end of the day before leaving. Masks, as I said, are worn at all times during the day. Daily disinfection of tools at the end of the day. One person to a vehicle, practicing social distancing while working, staggered start-stop times, and with all things COVID related, we've had a hiring freeze, so we've been a little short-staffed. Our staff consists of 4 full-time individuals, including myself, 2 seasonals, and 2 interns that we were lucky to be able to get this year due to a grant that we received. So we can go on to the next slide. And in this year, things that we've done to manage things organically and continue in this funny year are spring cleanups. We clean out all the debris, and you've got a little video of Tori Heine, who has a GoPro and did some videoing of some stuff she did out in the park. It was a great little thing, and we've been really busy with all staff and being short-staffed, trying to stay on top of things. So we've taken a more light-handed approach to build up the ecology of the park, giving things and beneficial insects and pollinators a place and a chance to live. Next slide. Along with that, after spring cleanups, we apply an organic mulch. It's a special mulch in some areas that we use. It's a combination of wood chips and compost. We employ a subcontractor that has mulch blower trucks because we don't have the capacity to hand install it. So they use their mulch blower trucks to install throughout the park. This year, as I said, we're using a wood chip and compost-based mulch. Next year, we're hoping to switch over to an all leaf mold compost, which kind of mimics what Mother Nature does naturally. Next slide. One of the projects we've done this year, we've done many, a handful of projects that have kept us busy. Working in Chin Park, we completed a renovation of the bamboo cages. We started last year, and we uncovered an issue that was causing the bamboo not to thrive. The bamboo was planted in its fiber pot with the cages wrapped around it, not allowing the rhizomes to creep out into the soil to thrive. So in doing so, we removed all of the bamboo from the cage, amended the soil, as I said, where we manage everything organically. Everything's kind of a ground up approach. What you don't have in the soil, it's a little harder to adapt afterwards. So we amended the soil with organic matter. And as you can see, digging up bamboo, if anybody knows, bamboo is not the easiest thing to do. So as with everything too, my staff behind me is amazing. So having a good staff behind you really helps, to, especially in times like these, to get through everything. So the cages are all replaced in chin now, and everything's looking really good. I'm happy with how it turned out. Next slide. Another thing we did in chin, we renovated the Serpentine path. There was a lack of color and inspiration. There were some sightline issues. We wanted to create a more open feeling. So we removed all of the plant material there. We had to use the tractor in some situations to get some stubborn plants out. But again, the team did an amazing job and it looks beautiful right now. We're really happy with the results. It's completely finished, mulched, and all done. Next slide, please. And that brings us to irrigation with organics and, sustainable management. Everything's connected, from the type of plant you choose to the soil that you're planting in, the conditions, and also watering. Everything is important to create a healthy functioning ecosystem. So getting our irrigation systems up and running properly is really important, especially this year. We were being short-staffed. A couple members of our irrigation team moved on. So we had some individuals really step up. Tori Heine and Ari John, a new seasonal employee, as well as a returning seasonal employee, Nicole Cimarero, really stepped up and got the irrigation systems installed and ready to go for the season. So they're functioning and functioning well. Another thing we missed are our volunteers. With all things COVID, we weren't able to have volunteer events until June. As you can see, there's a lady, Liz, there. I think she's jumping for joy, which is really exciting. We miss our volunteers, especially our regulars. They're like family to us, and we can't do all of the work that we do without them. So as you can see, we've had to, do certain protocols with wearing masks and social distancing, but we really have a great group of volunteers, and I can't thank them enough for joining us and in helping us out through this. We really missed them. It was really evident how much work they do for us. Another thing, as that we do, we were renovating some areas. We had some sod, a couple of trees were removed. So going through and replacing those bare areas with sod, that'll help keep weeds down. We overseed our lawns twice a year, but when we have a large area like this, it's best to sod it, put new sod in, and that'll keep the weed pressure down. As you can see, Adam and Ari were really excited. They had to remove a big stump by hand in the bottom middle picture there. And just love the posing there. They really succeeded. So that was excellent, and they did a fantastic job. Another part, we've got a little video here of our Compost Tea program. That's the basis of our of our organic program. It's all about soil biology and building up the good stuff that's in the soil. And this is a really important part of what we do. We do soil tests all the time, every year, to look at our standard levels and see what we have to do for the year going forward. So as one thing that we do, Tori Heine brews and applies our in-house compost tea. She's adding different ingredients, things like liquid humus, liquid kelp, fish hydrolysate, flour, molasses. Those are all ingredients that go into extracting all that good stuff out of the compost. And then we apply it to all of our lawns and beds. And as you can see in this picture, I'm really happy with the results that we're getting. People sitting out in the lawn enjoying it. It's healthy for all to enjoy. People, adults, kids, pets. It's really inspiring and important to me to provide a park that's healthy for all to enjoy, and also the abutting environment as well. The Boston Harbor, we're not polluting that with dangerous chemicals. Another thing that we're doing this year is with all things COVID at home, I built a little compost bin. We have a partnership with Trillium Brewery. They're trying to get they'll be getting a brewer's license this year. And as part of that, they'll be doing some on-site brewing. So we have an agreement with them that we'll be taking their leftovers from the brewing process and doing some in-house small-scale composting that'll allow us to hopefully add to our compost that we use for compost tea and build that biological diversity that we're aiming for. So we're really excited to start that this year. And that's all I have in horticulture for now. I'm going to hand it back to Jesse. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm back. Sorry for the hiccup earlier, everyone. But let me hand it quickly to Rebecca McKevitz. Rebecca is our capital projects manager and a member of the maintenance team. She's been with us for 2 years only, but rapidly became essential to our capital repair and improvement work, as well as to our maintenance operations. So, Rebecca?
Thank you, Jesse. So as Anthony just told you, here at the Conservancy, we have such a talented and dedicated staff that's really committed to keeping the park in great condition. And in the maintenance department, we really think about keeping the park in great condition for years to come. So you'll see our 5-person maintenance team out in the park throughout the week, repairing and maintaining all of the really unique assets that are along the Greenway. Things like the fountains and the Greenway carousel, all of the park furnishings and light fixtures, and all of the other hardscape elements. So they work to ensure that your favorite areas of the Greenway remain safe and functional and beautiful. So as you explore the Greenway, you'll notice that all 7 water features have been turned on for the season. So whether you enjoy splashing in the North End jets or taking a stroll past the Chinatown waterfall, or if you come to the Rings Fountain at night to see the nighttime colorful light show, there are plenty of places along the Greenway to come and cool off throughout the summer. Next slide. What you might not know is that in addition to weekly maintenance on all of the fountains, each year our team pulls the fountains apart and they do deep cleanings of the trough, repair and replace lights, waterproof any leaks, patch the masonry, and upgrade all of the mechanical systems so that we can make sure that the fountains are all running properly and looking great. Next slide. So this is the Rings Fountain. Just last year, we added a colorful light show, and so I highly recommend coming and checking it out at nighttime. Next slide. So this year, the delayed opening of the Greenway Carousel provided us an opportunity for the maintenance team to get out there and do a couple of significant enhancement projects. So we refinished all of the mahogany on the carousel ticket booth, and we replaced all of the LED strip lights on the carousel rounding boards, which you'll see on the next slide. And so you can see on the left-hand side is the old lights. Those are actually turned on. I know it's hard to tell, but on the right-hand side, you can see in process what the lights look like. And so now at night, the carousel really shines. So we hope that you'll come take a spin on our New England carousel creatures. Next slide. And next one. So in response to COVID-19, the Greenway has increased the frequency of cleaning and disinfecting throughout the park. So you can be assured that all of the high touch surfaces like benches and tables are sanitized several times every day. And additionally, our park rangers, Trina and Tyler, are out patrolling the park from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. They're out there welcoming visitors and providing information and directions and helping to ensure park safety for all. So if you see them when you're out there visiting, be sure to say hello. All right, that's all I have. So I will send it back to Jesse. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next up is Keelin Caldwell, our Director of Programs and Community Engagement. Keelin started as our first full-time volunteer coordinator 6 years ago and has now been promoted 3 times since to now lead the programs team. So with safety precautions in place, the beautiful park is still the perfect setting for so many of your favorite Greenway summer experiences, and Keelin will take a little bit of time to tell you all about them.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here with you tonight and see so many friendly names in the registration list. So in a normal year, we offer more than 400 free programs on the Greenway. Nearly all of those are in partnership with community organizations and small businesses. So I hope many of you are familiar with that sort of normal, robust calendar of festivals and markets and fitness classes, et cetera. This year, our program staff has been hard at work checking in and coordinating with over 100 partners to make those programs happen, to make sure they're doing okay and to create a plan for this year. Those were a lot of pretty difficult conversations. So I'm very proud of our team for approaching this work with compassion, strategic thinking, and we really believe that how we support our partners now determines, our mutual success in the future and the experience all of you can enjoy and expect on the other side of this. So while many of our traditional festivals and events are canceled for the year, oh, you could go back one slide, thank you. Canceled for the year, I wanted to take some time today to review our programs that are open, celebrate the amazing people behind the Greenway season. So as we started to reopen, the state and the city began releasing a wide variety of guidance, planning documents. We've spent a lot of time with those documents. All of our Conservancy partners have a safety plan. We keep in close contact with them on trends and adjustments there. So you can expect to see vendors and partners wearing masks, requiring mask use and 6 feet of spacing. And we've been working towards reopening when safety allows, understanding that some partners are eager to be back out there and some aren't ready yet. So what can you expect to see this season? Our food trucks are a signature program on the Greenway. The Conservancy hosted the first gourmet food truck in Boston and now has 35 trucks as part of the program. During the pandemic, our food trucks were always considered essential businesses, but with the low volume of people that were downtown, they all decided to shut down. So they were down from mid-March through the end of May. And we were in close individual communication with them during this time. And based on that, we began bringing back food trucks on a reduced schedule in June. And we currently have 8 out of 35 trucks that are vending by choice. You can find the schedule with the link at the bottom of the screen here. That does change every day. There's a range of cuisine options: tacos, bacon sandwiches, noodle bowls, bubble tea, more and more. There's usually several trucks out for weekday lunches at Dewey Square and at Rose Wharf. A few trucks at the Greenway Open Market on Saturdays, and our bubble tea truck is out right now on Saturdays and Sundays by the Carousel. Hours vary a little bit, but typically 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. is a good time to catch the most trucks. A majority of our food truck partners are minority or women-owned businesses, and they could really use, support in business right now. This is a program that does bring significant revenue to the Conservancy through usage fees. However, when we were looking at the extreme impact of coronavirus on these small businesses, we decided to waive rent from that mid-March to June period, and we're still only charging 25% of our typical fees. Trucks that used to see hundreds of orders of days are seeing more like 15 to 30. So again, their survival now helps make sure that we can both be successful in the future. As one of many stories, northeast of the border, pictured here, was one of the first trucks back. And executive chef Gustavo grew up in Mexico and has been, cooking his whole life throughout Mexico, the Bahamas, and it's been such a pleasure to see him back on the Greenway. When our staff caught up with him a few weekends ago, he was vending at the Greenway Market, serving his authentic Mexican cuisine and watching his wife and daughter run through the Rings fountain that had just reopened. So it is a nice place to spend an afternoon right there by the Rings fountain. The farmers market have returned in the beginning of June. Those farmers are also providing essential access to local food. They've updated their layout with additional spacing, hand washing, etc. The Greenway Open Market, which is run by New England Open Markets, resumed operations in mid-June following the state guidance on retail. This is a great opportunity to shop safely in the open air and support those local artisan vendors who are ready to be out there again. There's definitely less vendors than a typical summer, and they are much more spaced out for safety reasons this year. The Greenway Carousel reopened in late June. We've added ground decals for line spacing. We've closed off every other row so families can still sit together in the same row while being spaced. And as you may know, the carousel is accessible to people with physical and cognitive disabilities. Those aspects of the ride are still available. Just this past Saturday, I walked by and I saw, a little boy happily riding again. I kept going on my walk. And when I passed again over an hour later, he was still taking rides. So it's been great to have this back open again. For fitness, we typically have over 100 free classes each season in partnership with Blue Cross Blue Shield. We've been in ongoing communication with those partners. Some have decided not to be out this year. Some are recording virtual classes on the Greenway, and some are returning to the park, utilizing the guidelines for small distance classes. The class pictured here, their free pre-registration sold out within 30 minutes. So again, there's like a real desire for these types of programs. And then our drinkery spaces. So City Winery on the Greenway just reopened this past weekend. You can see here there's plenty of space and some tables off to the left to spread out and enjoy your meal and your glass of wine. This picture was taken literally the first hour they were open. They're actually open right now, welcoming guests to the Greenway. And for those of you that are fans of Trillium beer, Trillium is awaiting sort of the required licensing approval to return to the Greenway. And as soon as we have those, we'll be quickly moving forward to open back up the Trillium Garden on the Greenway. And I'm going to hand it back to Jesse.
Thanks so much, Keelin. Next up is Lucas Cowan, who has been the Director and Curator of Public Art for the Conservancy since 2014. In Lucas's 6 years, the Conservancy has won more awards from Americans for the Arts than any other nonprofit in the country. It's always been important to the Conservancy to present world's art in the park, where it's free and accessible to everyone, but the pandemic has made it even more so. So Lucas, tell us what's in the park.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jesse, and thank you for having me, everybody. This year, as Jesse said, due to COVID, we did have a larger slate of artists that were meant to be on the Greenway, but we were still happy to be able to be one of the only organizations in New England and Boston specifically to be actually installing work while the museums and other cultural institutions were closed. This year was a really big year thematic-wise. Each of the artists that I'm going to kind of talk about today are actually immigrants to a respective country, whether that's the United States or whether that's to London, and represent nationalities from Nigeria to Mexico City to China. And I think that's a really important aspect to talk about whose voice can be heard and the stories that they have to tell. So a lot of the work that we're going to talk about today is really based around this idea of culture, identity, and immigration, essentially. One of the first works that actually went up this year was a work called Global Connections, Mesoamerican Myths, the Domestication of Nourishment and Its Distribution by master Pepo Picado artist Catalina Delgado Trunk. Pepo Picado is essentially cut paper, and Catalina is a master in this craft. You would normally see this type of craft or traditional folk work at, say, Day of the Dead festivals. They're usually, Pepo Picado is used a lot in Mexican decor and celebrations. But Catalina has really taken this art form and really expanded it, and this is her first public art exhibition. A lot of what we do on the Greenway with our public art program is work with artists who have never worked in the public realm and to translate their works outside of their norms. And with Catalina really is telling the story of the creation of the sun, the earth, and the moon through Mesoamerican folklore, and then also talking about the concepts of food and how food has traveled to the four corners of the earth, and how food is also a metaphor for movement across borders. One of the things that Catalina says a lot about is that immigrants bring with them their cuisine, their tradition, and their languages, which results in a rich history of cultural exchange. And if you just go back one slide there quickly, I just want you to know this work changes from day to night. They are located on our infrastructure light blades, which are about 30 feet tall. And actually, we just installed signage as well too that you're able to go out there and change the color of these light blades using a text function that's called Color Commons. That was created by the New American Public Art a couple of years ago. So this is a kind of interactive work to really change it from any color, from rainbow to guacamole to lemon lime, whatever you wish those colors to be. And then I just wanted to share with you just kind of how we work to translate this work. Next slide, please. Catalina, again, as I said, works in Pepo Picado. So we actually had her create smaller versions of this work. On the left, you'll see a template that she created, that she drew out to create this 8-panel narrative. And then she actually created about 18 inches by 25 inches, 8 inches by 25 inch panels that we high resolution photographed and then had printed on clear vinyl that we were able to adhere to the light blades. So this has been a really wonderful cross-cultural exchange with her, and the concept of food and Mesoamerican myth is something that I think is really wonderful to expand and talk about the rich history of Latinx populations here in Boston. Next slide. Just last Tuesday, we had the pleasure of installing a monumental work by Nigerian London-based artist Yinka Shenebere with his new piece, Wind Sculpture, Second Generation 5. This piece actually explores the notions of harnessing the wind and freezing it in a moment of time. It's painted in a Dutch wax textile pattern, which is very synonymous with Yinka's work. And the work manifests as a large three-dimensional piece of fabric that appears to be glowing in reaction to the natural elements surrounding the environment. The fabric itself, the batik, is a metaphor for the movement of people, of trade routes, and global relationships. And batik fabric originated actually in Indonesia, and the Dutch colonizers used the technique to mass produce fabrics that were then sold to Britain's West African colonies, where they're embraced and now considered in the world's eyes as authentic African products. And so I think really in a lot of ways what Yinka is talking about is that he wants this piece to remind us that our contemporary cultures, like the batik fabric specifically, are the results of centuries of cross-cultural exchanges. And by referencing both the hybrid fabric and the powerful yet invisible nature of wind, the work suggests that identity is always a really richly layered and dynamic set of relationships, but at the same time evokes a sense of freedom and possibility. We're so proud to have this work here. We've been working on this piece for over 2 years. It was fabricated in London. If you go to the next slide, I just want to kind of show you a little bit of how that was created. So if you're looking at the slide on the left, you'll actually see the form of the mold of the fabric. If you think about how they make boats, with the layering of epoxies and fiberglass essentially. And then the internal core on the right is actually a steel pole. It almost is like a steel tree that holds the rigidity of this piece so it can stand upright and be secure in weather patterns, in frost, freeze, hot sun, New England summers and winters. Next piece. Back in February, we actually installed the 7th of our 12-year Zodiac curation in Chinatown with the work of Fur and Dye. 2020 is actually the year of the mouse. Some people refer to it as the year of the rat, but it's actually the year of the mouse. And it's a piece by Boston-based artist by the name of Fur and Dye, who now has just recently moved to New York, titled A Mouse with Ears and Tail. And this piece is really based around a lot of Feren's studio practice on the economy of cultural industry and how languages lose function, usage, and history over time. And so what she really wanted to do was trace back the history of the Chinese character for mouse. So if you go to the next slide, please. This is an image of it at night, lit. The little white character is actually the original character for mouse. That was the first written character. And when learning Chinese language, you have to learn over 50,000 characters. And a lot of those characters are actually signifiers for images of what the character means. So if you actually really look closely, it looks like a little white mouse. And then over time, going into what is now called Simsum, the yellow lighting that you see that's flashing is actually the current character for mouse. And you see it still retains its certain aspects of its character with the ears at the top and the whiskers, and then this backward J shape referencing the tail. Feren then overlaid an aspect of basically a mouse emoji to show you those locations of those characters, and also to talk about contemporary culture in the fact that we also are now sliding back into using symbolism such as emojis in our text messaging to communicate in a lot of ways. So it's really great to learn the history of these characters and the language through an art form such as neon. Next slide, please. And then this is just, again, just a kind of behind the scenes look. This is actually Neon Williams worked with the artist, which is one of the last remaining neon fabricators in New England, to help create this work for her. Neon is not her forte. And so working a lot with fabricators is really wonderful, and to help support the creative economy with Neon Williams is really exciting. Next slide. Another artwork that we have on the Greenway is actually a mixture of artworks, both historical and contemporary. As of last year in 2019, when our thematic for the curations on the Greenway were around the auto show, we created the United States' largest augmented reality exhibition at that time, consisting of 10 historical images that referenced the transportation corridor that is the Greenway going back to about 1850, along with in a curatorial partnership with Boston Cyber Arts in curating 3 contemporary augmented reality artists, Nancy Baker Cahill, John Craig Freeman, and Will Pappenheimer, to talk about different ways of seeing transportation in the future, and whether that's through climate change, whether that's through futuristic modes of mobility, or through kind of gestural drawings. It was a really exciting experience. This work is up still through August, if you still would like to experience it. And you don't have to be on the Greenway to experience it. Next slide. You can experience it from your own home. When COVID hit, we actually were able to work with Hoverlay, who is our partner software person, a developer, in helping to create this exhibition. You can now experience this both in your home and your backyard or anywhere in the world. If you just go to the Hoverlay app and look for Bring the Greenway Home, you can experience all of the contemporary works by the artist, as well as the historical imagery written by Amy D. Finstein, in the comfort of your own home. So make sure to check that out, because we got about 1 more month of that. Next slide. And then still up, we have the amazing work that we installed last year on the Dewey Square mural by Super A, or Stefan Thalen from the Netherlands, titled Resonance. You know, Super A, this whole mural is really, I think, apt for time right now in regards to the fact that it's questioning the social, political, and emotional systems that confine our freedoms. That was really the basis of what he was trying to get across. And he illustrates the urgent necessity, of breaking free from all those confines, like the barn swallowed pictured. In the title, he's really kind of conceptualizing the way that these cracks and fissures of the glass cloche grow, kind of elucidating how systems can shatter with even the smallest fissure through vibrations of unified resistance. So I think it's a very timely piece still, and we have 1 more year to experience this. Next slide. We also still have the work of Juan Trevesio in the Leather District. This is a smaller mural that's located in what we call the Lincoln Square Triangle, that Juan really was presenting the endangerment of species such as the tiger that you see pictured there, as an allegory for the consequences of society's shifting priorities and pitfalls of issues from climate change to gentrification, right? And it presents a kind of graphic topography of an invasive plants intertwining in between these tigers at the same time, suggesting a narrative of loss and isolation. Next slide. And we have 1 more work that's actually going to be coming this year in early September. For the past 1.5 years, we've been doing a community process artwork with local artist Yuan Wu in Chinatown, in which we did a juried selection, which a committee of Chinatown residents and population helped choose this artist. And she's been working diligently over the last 1.5 years to create a very large, dense lantern canopy titled Lantern Stories that references both the historical and the contemporary and, the historical past and present of Chinatown. And this work will be up for about 3 months. And then we're hoping to also reinstall it again next year when we are able to safely gather again, hopefully, and have a really celebratory Lantern Festival in Chinatown. I just want to say one last thing. I really want to thank all of our donors for being able to help us to create these artworks. All of the public art is privately fundraised for. And I'd like to also thank the National Endowments for the Arts. We've received now 4 National Endowment for the Arts awards over the past 7 years, and we're very thankful to them, as well as our other generous donors like Bob and Doris Gordon, who helped bring Yinka to fruition this year as well too. And thank you to NEFA, New England Foundation for the Arts, and others. So thank you so much. Back to you, Jesse.
Thank you, Lucas. We're really proud to commission artwork that elevates the voices and visions of great artists who are people of color like Yinka and Catalina. This is just one of the ways that we're working to deliver on the promise of the Greenway as everybody's park. Last year, we formally launched a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative to intentionally examine our internal culture and inherent biases, and to develop the staff's cultural competencies. This is ongoing work that will better equip us to deliver a park that's welcoming to Boston's socially, culturally, economically diverse residents and visitors. So in these challenging times, we remain committed to providing you with a world-class public park. We are preparing, however, for significant financial challenges ahead. While there are fewer events in the park, as Keelin talked about, our partnership model means this doesn't reduce the Conservancy's expenses. And our earned income, which typically makes up a third of our annual budget, will be lower than last year by probably $1.25 million this year, due to the lower rent from food trucks and the delayed openings of the carousel and the drinkeries. Our biggest fundraising event of the year, our June Gala on the Greenway, had to be canceled this year. And so while we did receive PPP funding, we still had to make a significant budget reduction. And every year, 80% of our annual budget is coming from private support, from privates. That's support that is sorely needed this year. We appreciate our family of supporters more than ever. Lucas gave shout outs to a number of them. We appreciate all of that generosity at this time and tomorrow and again the next day. You can help the Greenway by making a donation, by joining our volunteer program. You can multitask right now by texting to give. So thank you for what you have done in the past. Thank you for what you continue to do to support the Conservancy. So you've heard from us a lot, and we'd now like to take the time to answer your questions. Thank you to those that had sent questions in advance. And you can also ask a question by using the Q&A function in the Zoom webinar, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. If we aren't able to get to your question tonight, you can email us at info@rosekennedygreenway.org. So for the first question, one that came in ahead was, how is the Conservancy planning to address climate change as it impacts the Greenway? And I will take this one. You heard from Anthony about a number of our efforts, sustainability efforts that have from the very beginning been about trying to reduce our ecological impact. But we are currently in the process of doing a climate change resilience study, both to calculate the carbon footprint of our operations in the park, and also to study the impact of rising seas and greater storm surge and so on the park directly, and then what can be done to mitigate those effects. We're working with a great consultant that has worked with the city on their climate change initiatives, so we are building on the great work that the city has done and is doing in this regard to understand particularly how is the Rings Fountain Vault, how is the carousel, how are the landscapes going to be impacted by water, and so we can learn to live with it and adapt. Let's see, a second question. Was the Armenian memorial sculpture reconfigured this spring? Lucas, do you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah. So unfortunately, due to COVID, obviously, the sculpture was not able to be reconfigured because the city of Boston had specific construction guidelines that we couldn't move forward with at that point in time. And so we have a really strong partnership with the Armenian Heritage Foundation, and we are working to hopefully reschedule that for, again, April of next year.
Thanks, Lucas, and thanks, Janet, for that question. Another question, there are beehives in the park, and someone is asking if there are updates on the bees. Anthony, you want to take that?
Yes, thank you, Jesse, and thanks for the question. The bees are doing well this year. Unfortunately, last year over the winter, we did lose one of the hives. That is not uncommon with all the pressures that honeybees are facing nowadays with colony collapse disorder. But we have a great partner with Best Bees in Boston, and they are the ones that actively manage the hives. They put in a new colony in the one hive that was lost over the winter and are actively monitoring all of them. The other two were thriving and doing well. So we're happy to announce that we have 3 really well-functioning honeybee hives.
Thanks, Anthony. Another question, Keelin, will there be outdoor dining options on the Greenway this year?
Yeah, so one of the guidelines around beer and wine gardens being open right now is that they do have to do seated table service. So one nice thing about City Winery on the Greenway is that you can sit at a table up to 6 people. They have food options available, so some wraps and salads, and you can enjoy your glass of wine right in Dewey Square. And then, of course, like I talked about, all of our food trucks, you can get your meal and eat it right on the Greenway. So those would be sort of the two go-to dining options this year.
Thanks. Let's see. Lucas, can you tell us more about the public art planned for next year?
Well, yes. All things, as I kind of mentioned before, with Yinka, we work about 2, 3, 4 years sometimes out with our public art projects. It takes that long. And depending where our artists are located, whether they're local, national, or international, there's a lot of stuff that we have to organize around. I am really excited about next year because next year we'll be doing something completely different. We will be presenting one artist that will be taking over the entire Greenway, that will be doing the mural, that will be doing sculptural work, that will be doing installation and photography work. This is really kind of going back to our original public art strategy that was kind of created in 2012, that talked about an artist taking you through the entire Greenway. We're really excited with this artist. This was an artist that also received a National Endowment for the Arts grant to realize this work. It is the first time this work will be presented outside in public forum. This artist is a photographer. And so we're working with him to translate his photographs into sculptural forms, into installations, into a mural, as well as a large-scale outdoor photo exhibition of his work. And hopefully, depending on COVID guidelines going forward into next year, a lot of programming that can actually go along with it. So look out for more.
An associated question, Lucas, which you sort of covered there, but just to make it more explicit, when will the mural at Dewey Square change next?
Sure. So, I mean, again, as of due to COVID earlier this year, we did have to do some budget cuts as well too, as well as the construction issues. So we weren't able to change it out, but I think we're so happy and proud to still present Super A's work still up through this next year, and the new work will be installed in May of 2021 next year.
Thank you. Wanted to encourage folks to continue type questions in. We have several more queued up, but happy to hear from you with additional questions. Let's see, does the Conservancy expect to host any festivals this fall if we move into phase 4? Keelin, you want to take that both on the festivals and the likelihood of phase 4 in the fall?
Oh boy. Yeah, I think at this point, we're feeling like that's probably unlikely. Phase 4 is defined as having a vaccine. I mean, I think there'll probably still be, phase 3, step 2, step 3. So we just are monitoring the ongoing release of guidance. But unfortunately, I think festivals might be a bit too far for this fall. So we're working closely with all of those partners to get a jump start on planning for next year. And of course, we'll be keeping an eye on all of that guidance to see what we are able to do this year safely.
Thank you. Anthony, is Compost Tea applied over the entire park?
Good question. Yes, everything we do is based off of soil tests that we do perform on a yearly basis in the fall time for all of our lawns and planting areas. So as Compost Tea is a basis of our organic program, we do apply it throughout the entire park. As a rule right now, our program consists of 3 applications yearly to our lawns, spring, late spring, early summer, fall, and then twice yearly to all of our plant beds. So it is applied throughout the Greenway. We do some specialty treatments as well as additional applications as we encounter issues in the park. But yep, throughout the entire park.
Thank you. Rebecca, I think this one's for you. Is there an update on the Parcel 2 new park project that had community meetings last year? When's that garden going to be ready? And maybe for those that don't know their parcel numbers, you can just give a little context on what Parcel 2 Park is.
Sure. So Parcel 2 is one of the last remaining or I guess the last remaining Greenway parcel that has yet to be developed. So it's all the way at the very northern terminus of the Greenway. It's near One Canal and the Beverly. And so we've been working, the Conservancy's been working with BPDA and Mass DOT over the last year to create a design with a landscape architect that's ultimately going to be built on this parcel. And so at this point, we're anticipating beginning construction this year in the fall of 2020, getting most of the hardscape built, and then coming back in the springtime when the weather is better to put all of the plantings in place. So you'll probably see some construction out there this fall and then again next spring with the hopes of opening the park for next summer's season.
Thank you. Someone asked, how can I volunteer on the Greenway? Keelin, you wanna take that?
Yeah. So like Anthony said, we're back out in the park with volunteers. So we have volunteers help in a number of different ways, typically with the Conservancy. Some of them work in gardening in the park. We actually have an art or park ambassador program that's on hold for this year with social distancing. But if you check out our website, it sort of explains our different programs. Our volunteer coordinator, Isabel, is great at connecting people with opportunities that match what they're interested in. In particular, our gardening program right now, we have individual volunteers helping once a week. Our group volunteer program, which engages a lot of local businesses, that's going to be returning to the park in August. So we'll have then an individual project once a month that people can sign up for. And then as people get more, involved in our volunteer program, we actually have a really successful zone gardening program in which volunteers are matched directly with a horticulturalist. And it's like, 1-to-1 or 1-to-3 staff and volunteers working together in the same area of the Greenway every week. So they get to know the horticulturalist that they're working with and that zone because each area of the park is designed a little bit differently and has a different plant palette and all of that. So yeah, just check out our website. We'd love to have you.
Thanks. And Keelin, another one for you actually about whether there's going to be any live music in the park this summer.
Good question. Most of the live music we have on the Greenway is usually tied to a festival or an event. So sort of naturally isn't returning with the restrictions on those. However, we do usually work with the Berkeley School of Music. They have a summer concert series, and typically we have their young artists out in Chinatown Park in particular to do live concerts. They are moving that all virtual, so we're still a community partner on that. And you'll see, if you follow our social media feeds, you'll see us posting videos through them once a week for I think the next 6 weeks or so. So that, although it's not in the park, that is a way to engage with some local musicians.
Thanks. And consistent with the popularity of our programs, Keelin, yet another one for you. Glow in the Park, our young professional fundraising party. Someone asks whether that will happen this year.
Unfortunately not. So yes, that's our young professional sort of fundraising event, as Jesse said, that typically happens the night after our gala on the Greenway. That's the one time a year that we put a big tent up in the park and all gather together to celebrate the Greenway. So in June, when those events were set to happen, we made the difficult decision to not hold those this year, thinking that it probably wouldn't be that we could, postpone them to the fall, which is seeming to be the case. So we are taking the year off from those events, and we'll be looking at what we can do next year. But as sort of Jesse said at the end of his, those events are really important in cultivating our donors, cultivating people that are interested in the park. So hopefully anyone who is interested in that kind of event is connecting to us in other ways and still remaining part of that family of supporters.
We have not mentioned it significantly, but some of the ways you can connect with us, we are extremely active on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. You can sign up for an e-news blast. If you have not done those things, they're great ways to find out a lot of the detail we're talking about tonight. I noticed that someone asked how the beehives were doing. Anthony had talked before about how they're doing well now, how one hive had to be replaced over the winter. Hopefully that answers the question, or if you have something more specific, please write back. Lucas, someone has asked when UNWU's work will be installed.
Right, yeah. We're so excited for it to be installed. We've been working almost 2 years on it. The work is kind of slated to be installed the first week of September, which is going to be wonderful, I think, in the fall to have that lit and the nighttime coming sooner to be able to experience that work. But one thing I do want to mention is that on next Tuesday, UNWU is going to be in conversation with Sheila Novak, our amazing project manager for public art, who is really responsible for getting all of the work you see on the Greenway installed. She will be in conversation with UNWU and other community members talking about the process that UNWU has gone through and kind of the conversations that she's had with the Chinatown community in helping to realize this work. So you can actually find information on that on our Facebook, as well as on our Greenway calendar, and it will be presented via Zoom. So please join us. I think it's 5 or 5:30 on the 21st. So please join us then. More to come.
Keelin, thanks, Lucas. Keelin, could you elaborate upon some of the precautions that are being taken at the Greenway Carousel?
Sure. So yeah, like I mentioned, there's stickers right on the ground leading up to the ticket booth and also for the line of the carousel. The ride itself, every other row is blocked off, so families can ride together in a row, but just one family unit per row. That gets cleaned on a very regular basis. There's hand sanitizer available for public use. The ticket booth itself, you can buy tickets online actually for the first time ever if you prefer to just hold your phone up and have the transaction that way. There's also plexiglass in the opening of the ticket booth and the card readers on the outside, so it should be a pretty contactless transaction. And when you get into the carousel enclosure itself, there's one-way markings around. So although we love our normal run to get the best animal, everyone's just sort of proceeding through that way to pick the animal they'd like to ride on. That's everything I can think of. Oh, and of course, the operators are wearing masks, and mask use is required. In Massachusetts, if your child's between 2 and 5, it's at the parent's discretion, though of course we're advocating for that. And then under 2, mask use is not required or recommended, but all adults should be wearing masks and children over 5.
Thank you, Keelin. What is maybe the last question we'll have time for, but Anthony, oh, another one came in. Anthony, pruning group this fall?
Sorry, Jesse, what was the question?
The question was, will there be a pruning group this fall, which I assume refers to the volunteer opportunities that we have?
Yes, very much so. We'll be doing, if it's about the winter pruning, we have year-round volunteer efforts. Over the winter, the last few years, we've worked with a really close group of our regular volunteers doing winter pruning. Everybody's troopers coming out when the weather's cold out, working out in the park, doing some lovely pruning. It's an opportunity to teach some more skills to individuals, or have individuals that have higher functioning or higher horticulture skills. So yes, we plan on doing that very much so this winter, and looking forward to it. It's something we very much enjoy doing over the winter.
Great. I think we'll take one last question from our former board member, Helen Chinchlichty. Thank you for joining us. asking about the Chin Park lighting project that we held community meeting on, I don't know, 6 months ago. Who can keep track of time anymore? Rebecca, you want to give a quick answer there before we wrap?
Sure. So as Jesse said, for, wow, maybe almost a year now, we've been working in Chin Park, thinking about how to enhance lighting throughout the park. So we've been working closely with our business improvement district, and we were able to receive grant funding from the Mass Cultural Council. So thank you to them, to again, design and eventually implement new additional and enhanced lighting all throughout Chin Park, Mary Suhu Park, in the Chinatown Viewing Garden. So, you know, you'll see both new fixtures in the park that don't currently exist, and some of the fixtures that are there will replace with, you know, better, newer technology, maybe some brighter bulbs. All of the lights will be LED. So we anticipate working on that project through the end of the year and starting construction in spring of 2021. So keep an eye out for that.
And I will add a number of potential improvements, lighting improvements come out of that project. And we're doing a first phase now, but we'll continue to fundraise for subsequent phases. So with that, since we're closing in on 6:30 and want to be respectful of everybody's time, thank you to those who joined this evening. It's been an incredibly challenging spring and summer for everybody. And we are so grateful for the Greenway community, our board members, our staff, our volunteers, our supporters. If we didn't get a chance to address your question tonight, email us at info@rosekennedygreenway.org. We try to be extremely responsive there. And as I mentioned, look for us on social media. We remain committed to providing a world-class park and appreciate our family of supporters and encourage you to text to give or give of your time. We look forward to seeing you on the Greenway. Thanks.